As part of Joe Biden's new $700 million weapons package to Ukraine, the Biden administration has now said that they will give Ukraine some of the 300-kilometer rockets that Zelensky wanted so much. Now, this is part of an MLRS system known as M270 and also M142. The 270 has 2 rocket blocks and is a tracked vehicle. The 142 has 1 rocket block and has regular tires. Each rocket block can shoot 6 conventional grad-style rockets that have ranges of 40 and 70 kilometers, or it can shoot 1 big rocket that has a range of 300 kilometers. Originally, the Biden administration said flat out they weren't going to give Ukraine any of these MLRS systems. And then they said, okay, we'll give them to you, but we're only going to give you the 40 and the 70 kilometer ammo, which Ukraine already has better MLRS systems than that as it is. Well, now Biden has flip-flopped again, and he says, well, Zelensky, he really promised us that he's not going to fire any of these rockets into Russia, so we're going to give him the 300-kilometer rockets. And so immediately, this is supposed to be the latest game-changing Wunderwaffen that's going to turn the tide, and Putin better be afraid, and Russia's going to get their butts kicked now. Well, hardly. We're only giving them 12 systems. Now, there's no word yet on how much actual ammo they're going to get, how many actual 300-kilometer rockets. Now, to put this in perspective, before the war even started, Ukraine had hundreds of MLRS systems, including large quantities of the Smerch system and the Uragan system, both of which are pretty sophisticated because Russia is using the same systems. Ukraine perhaps started out with over 75 Smerches and 75 Uragans. The Smerch, I believe, carries 12 rockets. The Uragan, there's a version that carries up to 16. And these are rockets that go like 90 to 100 kilometers. These 12 M270s, it's not even going to put a small dent in the number of MLRS systems that Ukraine has probably already lost. The only way that they'll be even noticed is if Zelensky fires them into Russia. Now, for several weeks, Ukraine was putting a lot of resources into hitting targets inside of Russia, as well as hitting Snake Island. And in my opinion, they were wasting a lot of their best resources on psychological targets rather than going after pragmatic targets on the front line. Now, this whole thing where, well, Zelensky promised us he wouldn't fire them to Russia is actually kind of a joke, because when Ukraine does hit targets inside of Russia, they always issue denials. They won't claim credit for any of it. And so officially, Kiev says that there's an anti-Putin rebellion going on inside of Russia. And when something blows up right across the border, and witnesses say there was Ukrainian attack helicopters or a Bayraktar drone or a Tochka-U or whatever it is, well, Kiev just says that's the anti-Putin rebellion. Now, I want to talk about a couple of things I see as huge problems. Just slightly over a week ago, Lloyd Austin and Mark Milley, the guys running the show at the Pentagon, held a press conference. And by press conference, I mean like 6 hand-selected reporters were allowed into the room. They're still pretending like they can't have real press conferences because of COVID-19. How convenient. And one of them actually pins them down and says, what is the end game? What does the end result look like that you're trying to achieve by giving Ukraine all these weapons?
Tom, our effort is to do everything that we can to strengthen Ukraine's hands on the battlefield and also at the negotiation table. And so we're going to stick with doing everything we can to make sure that they achieve their objectives. At the end of the day, what this looks like, what end state looks like, will be defined by the Ukrainians and not by us.
Yeah, I would just echo exactly what he said. The end state is defined by the political leadership. And in this case, President Zelensky is going to define the end state inside the boundaries of Ukraine.
So the end state, as they call it, totally depends on Zelensky and what the Ukrainian leadership in Kiev wants. And the Pentagon is just giving Ukraine all this weapons, so Zelensky has a better hand at the negotiation table when he decides to negotiate. Meanwhile, Zelensky gave a speech via Zoom at Davos, and afterwards he was interviewed over Zoom by CNN. They essentially wanted to know, what does the end of this look like? How does this come to a conclusion? And Zelensky says, well, it will be concluded by negotiations in a peace treaty. And what that peace treaty looks like depends on how much money and weapons that we keep getting from America and Europe.
As far as my guess, when this war might end, that would depend on several things, very specific things. First of all, the will and the desire of the United West to stay united in supporting Ukraine with weapons, with finance, to boost our resilience, and political will not to be afraid, but fight against the Russian Federation in this hybrid war, not with boots on the ground, of course, but in various other alternative ways.
So does that sound like an infinite feedback loop to you? How can we have any faith in these people? Meanwhile, in that CNN interview, Zelensky went on to fantasize about regime change in Russia and said, hopefully, when we go to the negotiation table, we'll be negotiating with a different Russian head of state. So is Zelensky even being realistic? Because the end state described by Lloyd Austin and Mark Milley sounds a lot different than the end Sieg that we've been hearing Zelensky talk about for months now. Now, before I continue, this channel was started in January of 2018, and by the end of the year, I was getting, 40 to 60,000 views per video. And so first, YouTube shadow demonetized the whole channel. So I have all green lights. My channel is supposed to be fully monetized, but for every single video, the instant I press the publish button, it says not suitable for ads. And then later, around 2020, they completely suppressed distribution of my videos. So I only get like 2,000 to 3,000 views now. And who knows how long this will last. I got my first warning recently. It was for my collection of cat videos. So I posted my favorite cat videos in July of last year, and almost a year later, YouTube deleted the video and gave me a warning saying that my cat videos were promoting a violent extremist organization. How? I have no idea. The video is still up on BitChute and Odyssey. It's called Pet Videos That Don't Suck. So who knows how long this channel will even be on YouTube. So please subscribe to my backup channels on BitChute and Odyssey. Links in the description. Also, you can support my work via Subscribestar. So thank you very much to my Subscribestar Patreons. Also, this video is being sponsored by the Conservative Citizens Foundation. So check out their website at national-conservative.com. So as a final note, it seems like Europe is very much running out of weapons to send Ukraine. And these politicians in Kiev, they're all complaining about Germany, saying that Germany has hardly sent anything since March. They're saying that Germany has shortchanged them. And for the past 2 months, there's been all this talk out of Germany, well, maybe we can give Ukraine this, and maybe we can give Ukraine that. And then the German army will say, well, we don't have any to spare. Or some other country that owns the technology vetoes the transfer to Ukraine. So now Germany is really scraping the bottom of the barrel. First, they said they were going to send 2,700 old Soviet man-pads that were made in the early 80s for East Germany. Now, right on the units, it says the shelf life is 25 years. Well, then they announced that 1 out of 4 had a dead battery. So they were only sending 75% as much. Well, if 1 out of 4 had a dead battery, do you think most of the rest have highly compromised batteries? I mean, do you really want to expose yourself to try to shoot down a helicopter with a man-pad with a highly compromised battery? Meanwhile, I talked about this before, there's all these protest videos coming out, and there's this sensational article from Washington Post about this unit of civilian volunteers on the front lines and how a bunch of their men have actually been arrested by the Ukrainian government. And then Washington Post said that 2 days after the interview, the commander and the lieutenant had been arrested because they ordered the men to retreat. Well, now there's a video, it looks like it just came out today, from the 35th Naval Infantry. This is the Ukrainian version of the Marines. And the 35th and the 36th Naval Infantry Brigades were among the most elite brigades of the Ukrainian army at the beginning of the war. Most members of the 36th were in Mariupol. About 1,600 or so are now POWs. It's unknown exactly how many naval infantry there are total. Wikipedia says 6,000 total. The 35th and the remaining battalion from the 36th are north of Kherson Oblast, and they're leading the Ukrainian counteroffensive against Kherson Oblast. And now apparently members of the 18th Battalion of the 35th have been disarmed and are facing criminal charges. And they made this video saying that in 4 days on the border of Kherson Oblast, 80 people were killed or wounded, plus many more are missing or captured. Now, they don't say how many people their battalion started out with, but they say that even before this, the command began arresting and taking away members of their battalion, and now they've apparently been disarmed and are facing charges themselves. Now, this is not civilian volunteers. This is the Marines. This is one of their elite brigades. Maybe the 18th is a reserve unit and not part of an active duty unit. I don't know. But there's no question this is one of Ukraine's elite brigades. And, a few days ago, one of the leaders of the Lugansk People's Republic said that between the LPR and the DPR, there are now 10,000 Ukrainian POWs being held. And that's entirely possible because there should be about 5,000 just from Mariupol. I mean, there's 2,430 just from Azovstal. Well, with all these people being charged with crimes by Ukraine, I mean, Ukraine might end up with more Ukrainian POWs than the Russian forces have Ukrainian POWs. Now, I don't know, there's one video where a guy is threatening some Ukrainian troops with prison for refusing to go back to the front lines. And some people are yelling out, "Where are you going to put us? There's nowhere left to put us." And so I don't know if they're actually putting all these people in prisons, but they take their body armor and their weapons, and they are being charged with crimes. Now maybe they're just paroled for a lack of anywhere to put them. But the situation looks really bad. I mean, it looks like a collapse, a widespread collapse of morale. All right, thanks for watching this video. Click the like button, post a comment below, tell me what you think about this. Click the subscribe button, new video every few days.